Thanks for joining us, Dave. Obviously, you've analysed it over the weekend. You would have done it yourself, and then you would have done it with your players on Monday. What's your verdict now?
Yeah, we watched the game again on Sunday. Then we spent an hour and a half with the players on yesterday morning. I think by a margin we weren't far off. I think we're the better team between both boxes, but we couldn't quite score a goal. And then they took their chances, their few chances when they came along. And I suppose that's what wins your football game. So we've got to take a bit of heart from the fact that we're a better team between both boxes, but understand that doesn't necessarily, them areas of the pitch don't necessarily win you the games of football. So we've got to improve in the other areas. It was pleasing in many aspects. At the same time, we come away with 0 points, and it's points that ultimately decide where you end up in this league. So we've got to make sure that we don't get carried away with anything and continue to improve.
Obviously, you've got new signings in your squad this time around. They will be seeing different things, what you do and what you approach on a Monday morning. Did you get good input from players in your video session?
Yeah. Players that have recently joined us and players that have been here for a while all spoke and all gave their thoughts and input. And it was interesting to hear what they said. It was good for us as management team to hear what they thought. And it was good for them to be able to express themselves. We get better together and we win and lose together. And it's not just the staff with the players or, the players not with the staff. We're all together and we all get better together and we all improve together. And them kind of sessions go a long way in showing that, really.
The majority of your week's training, when you haven't got a midweek game, will be mapped out and planned which way you're going to go. But if you lose a game on the previous Saturday, going into a free week and then waiting for the Saturday to come around to play your next competitive game, do you actually do different training sessions, different work?
Maybe, but not necessarily. The early part of the week is spent developing players, and even towards the back end of the week, we've still got a high focus on that. Although there'll be some sessions that focus on the upcoming team that we're about to play. All the while, we're still developing players. Does that change based on what happened the previous Saturday? You can't say it doesn't. If we've conceded 7 goals in 3 games from set pieces, you need to do some work on it. But likewise, if you're coming up against the 7 dwarfs on Saturday, maybe then that's not the time. So you've got to make sure that you plan for what's coming ahead as opposed to looking back. But you can't ignore that fact. So I suppose to answer your question, sometimes yes and sometimes no. We're always developing our players. We're not purely, every day of the week on a performance program, if you like, where it's just matches are important. We've got to make sure we are developing players, and that them early days in the week allow us to do that.
You won't make this as an excuse for what's gone on in your, let's say, 3 games that you've played at home where, against decent opposition. But I think it's 6 goals conceded, 1-4, and 3 defeats at home since the lockdown. When the lockdown got going abroad and all around the parts of the world, the home club seemed as though they couldn't get those results. What do you make of that?
Well, it's certainly not an excuse. But I think the Bundesliga, because that was the first European big league to get back going, I think there were a high proportion of away results or away wins and a decrease in home wins. Does that equate to League One, 3 months later? I'm not sure it does or it doesn't. I think it is different when you're at home with no crowds. There's no getting around that. But make no bones about it, that's not an excuse. We've got to be better. Home or away, it doesn't really matter. We've got to win games of football. So I think there's some truth in what you're saying, but it can't be used at any point as an excuse, that's for sure.
You definitely take some positives out of that game against Charlton, who we were all talking after the game. When you think about it, they were still playing championship football in June. I think their last game was against Leeds United, and we all know where they are now. Your last game was in March against Stevenage, and you saw that, didn't you? There was that little gap between the clubs, and ironically, this weekend is a bit similar. You know, you've got a Hull City side, championship, Crewe Alexandra side, a few months ago, League Two, but deservedly now in League One.
Yeah, I think we've got Wigan as well soon.
Yes.
We've got Oxford, who lost in the playoff final. I think 4 of our first 5 games, you know, they could have, they either were or could have been championship teams very recently or currently. So we know we've got a tough start. You know, we've got to play them all, so we might as well play them. And there's no point. You know, there's just no point worrying about where they were or what they weren't doing or who they played. We've got to be better and you know, and win games of football. That's what we're used to doing, home or away, and we've got to make sure that happens. Yeah, we're playing Hull on Saturday in the Premier League, not so long back. Now they're in League One. We've got to make sure we go there, give a good account of ourselves, and win the game.
The one thing that you've got in your squad and what you've built up is you've got a very exciting attacking side, expansive the way that you play the game. Would it be right in saying that sometimes you need to be a little bit more streetwise in your defending in the way that the game was lost at the weekend against Charlton?
Yeah, I think the first goal sums that up. We're in possession. We've got Perry higher than their wide forward left winger. And then we've got, so Omar shuffles over and Luke shuffles over and something breaks down and their best player on the pitch, their right winger is free. So yeah, there's a bit of, you know, and you get away with that in League Two, but you don't in League One. It's as simple as that. So we've got to make sure that we're still safe behind us in possession. Because if you're not, one pass does you. It's as simple as that. So there's got to be that understanding of actually we're still safe, we're still solid, and not expansive, even in possession, or as expansive in possession, so that we, you know, even if we're not scoring goals, we're not conceding them. You know, the goals changed the game. Certainly the second goal, they changed the game, and we've got to make sure that we're not chasing ourselves. Because, you know, teams can then sit in and it is on the counter and what have you. We've got to make sure we're nice and solid so that when the opportunities come, you know, we take the lead as opposed to get us back in the game or equalise.
Yeah, that is the one thing, isn't it, that you don't want to be doing is chasing games. And you found that, again, at the weekend, a learning point. Probably sometime you need to bed in to just adjust to life in League One.
Yeah, I think, you know, we can, again, I don't want that to sound like an excuse. You know, some of these players haven't played League One. Some of them have 3 or 4 years ago when they weren't ready. And others have come in from outside who have definitely played that level. So we played one league game and not got the right result, but the performance was okay. So we've got to make sure that we keep performing well. And if the performances are there, I'm sure we'll win games of football.
Free week for you in terms of training, but I guess you'll be out and about watching games, and no more so than probably heading up to Ellen Road to get a first view of Leeds, will you? A first view of Hull City who are playing Leeds in the Cup.
Yeah, I'm going there tomorrow. Kenny's going to Oxford tonight to watch them against Watford. So out and about, the fun starts. It'll be a bit of a different experience being in empty stadiums. It's always better when there's fans in. We all know that. We all want that to happen. I read this morning that they still might be allowing small numbers in October, which is pleasing, obviously, if it happens. And hopefully, I think all these doctors that have gone to medical school for so long and keep predicting a second spike, let's just hope that they didn't take the pandemic module at uni. They've got it wrong, so that we all can get back to some sort of normality quicker than maybe what's going to be expected.
Just one final point. You've got 4 players, I think, been out of the reckoning for a couple of weeks. Have you got any Brighton news developing this week on Chris Porter, Tom Lowry, Donovan Daniels and Daniel Powell.
Donovan and Daniel ran. That's two different people, by the way. Ran yesterday. Both of them ran yesterday. So they're, we'll see how they get on the rest of this week. Tom is at the start of his end stage rehab. So he was involved in the lightest bits of training yesterday, the recovery bit, just to get him moving again. And then he went and did some running on his own. And we're hopeful that the interventions and the stuff that we've put in place and the treatment that he's had is now working. And Chris is still sort of plodding along with his heel injury, and we're hopeful of a bit better news this week, really. So mixed, I would say. I think we're getting there. We're certainly moving in the right direction. Some are a bit slower than others. That's the only issue.